Hey guys, Lost Legacies Channel welcomes you. Tonight we are not marching with legions or debating in the Forum. Instead, we are stepping into the well-worn sandals of one of the Roman Empire's most essential and perhaps most overlooked professionals. Imagine the great city of Rome, a sprawling metropolis of 1 million souls, all thirsty. Thirsty for water to drink, to bathe in, to run the grand fountains that are the city's pride. That water doesn't appear by magic. It flows day and night along monumental stone arteries, the aqueducts. And you are an inspector. Your job is to walk and walk and walk, ensuring that stone artery doesn't fail. It's a job of immense importance and even greater monotony. And let's be honest, given the lack of modern medicine and safety standards, you probably wouldn't survive your first year. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. As always, I love seeing where you're all listening from, so feel free to drop your city or country and the local time in the comments below. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you register is the cold. It seeps up from the stone floor. A damp, persistent chill that finds its way through the thin straw mattress and into your bones. There is no gentle alarm clock, no gradual lightening of the room. There is only the darkness, a shade less absolute than it was hours ago, and the rooster somewhere in the village who has decided it is his civic duty to announce the end of the world, or perhaps just the dawn. It's a fine line. You lie still for a moment listening. The deep, rumbling snores of the other lodgers in the common room of this dusty way station are the only other sounds. This isn't your home. Home is a concept that feels distant when your work is measured in milestones along a stone channel. You swing your legs over the side of the simple wooden cot, your feet recoiling slightly as they meet the frigid flagstones. You don't bother with a lamp. You know the layout of this small, sparse room by heart. Your tunic, a coarse woolen garment the color of undyed sheep, is draped over a stool. You pull it over your head, the rough fabric scratching your skin. It smells faintly of sweat and the wood smoke from last night's fire. Over this, you fasten a thick leather belt, from which you will later hang the tools of your trade. Your sandals are stiff, the leather hardened by yesterday's long walk. You sit on the edge of the cot, methodically working the straps, your fingers clumsy in the cold. This is the routine. The same quiet, deliberate movements that begin every single day. There is no rush. The aqueduct is patient. It was here long before you, and it will be here long after. Your breakfast, your ientaculum, is waiting for you on the small table. It's a testament to the glamour of your profession. A hard wedge of bread, a small piece of salty cheese, and a wooden cup of water. You chew the bread slowly, its crust threatening to scrape the roof of your mouth. You dunk a piece into the water to soften it, the way you've done 1,000 times before. There's no hot coffee, no tea. Just sustenance, fuel for the long day of walking. You eat in the near darkness. The silence of your room a stark contrast to the impending, endless task. Stepping outside, the pre-dawn air is sharp and clean, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant livestock. The sky is a deep, bruised purple, with the first hint of pale gray appearing on the eastern horizon. The stars are still bright, cold, and indifferent. You are somewhere in the countryside outside of Rome, a tiny, insignificant figure in a vast, sleeping landscape. But your focus is singular. Before you, stretching into the gloom, is your charge, the Aqua Appia. It isn't a glorious, soaring structure of arches here, not like in the postcards from the future. Here, miles from the city, Rome's oldest aqueduct runs mostly underground or at ground level, a long, unassuming stone trough covered with heavy stone slabs. Built over 3 centuries ago by the censor Appius Claudius Caecus, it's a testament to where it all began. It lacks the grandeur of the newer aqueducts, but its quiet persistence is what made all the others possible. It is the grandfather of them all, and its care falls to you. You are a state employee, a small cog in the great machine of the Cura Aquarum. the Imperial Water Commission. Historians still argue whether men in your position were salaried state employees in the modern sense, or contract laborers paid by the job. To you, the distinction is meaningless. All you know is that if the water stops, the pay stops, and the questions from very important men in Rome begin. You pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders and begin to walk. The path alongside the aqueduct is well worn, a dirt track compacted by the feet of countless inspectors before you. Your footsteps make a soft, rhythmic crunch on the gravelly soil. Left, right, left, right. This is the sound that will dominate your day. It's a sound of purpose, but also of profound, endless repetition. The aqueduct itself is silent, a stone serpent hiding its watery treasure. Your job is to be its eyes and ears, to spot the telltale dark patch of damp earth that signifies a subterranean leak, to notice if a covering slab has been displaced by tree roots, to see everything and nothing at all for miles on end. The sun is not yet up, but your workday has already begun. There are at least 15 miles to cover before nightfall, every single foot of it under your watchful, weary gaze. The gray light of dawn is slowly giving way to a soft, watery gold. The sun is still hidden by the Alban Hills, but its arrival is imminent, painting the high, thin clouds in shades of rose and orange. You've been walking for the better part of an hour, the rhythmic crunch of your sandals a constant companion. The initial chill has subsided into a cool, pleasant crispness. You decide this is as good a time as any for the day's first ritual. You find a large, flat-topped milestone, a relic of some long-forgotten road that once ran parallel to your aqueduct, and set down the leather satchel you carry slung over your shoulder. You sit for a moment, the cold of the stone a familiar feeling, and unroll the stiff leather flap of your toolkit. There is no gleaming steel, no complex machinery. Your instruments are humble, practical, and have changed little in hundreds of years. They are made of wood, bronze, and iron. They are heavy, solid, and dependable. The first thing you check is your plumb bob, the perpendiculum. It's a simple cone of bronze, reassuringly heavy in your palm, suspended from a length of tightly wound linen string. When you check the retaining walls or the piers of a bridge, this simple tool will tell you with unflinching honesty if they are true. There is no arguing with gravity, which makes it the most reliable colleague you have. You run the string through your fingers, checking for any phrase, before placing the bob gently back into its fitted leather slot. Next to it lies the mason's square, the norma. A right angle made of aged oak, its edges reinforced with thin bronze strips. It's scuffed and scarred from years of use. You use it to check the corners of cut stones on patch repairs to ensure the sluice gates and the distribution tanks are set correctly. It's a tool of precision in a world of brute force, a small piece of geometry you carry with you. Historians still argue whether inspectors like you typically worked alone, as you do today, or in small teams of 2 or 3. On days like this, surrounded by silence, the solitude feels absolute, making your connection to these inanimate objects feel more like a partnership. You are a team of one plus your tools. You pull out a small, coarse bag. Inside are lumps of chalk for marking fissures and a small, heavy-headed hammer. The hammer is perhaps your most versatile tool. You use its clawed end to scrape out weeds that have taken root in the mortar, and its flat head to tap along the concrete of the channel walls, listening for the subtle change in tone that might indicate a hollow space or a hidden weakness behind the surface. It's a crude diagnostic tool, relying more on your ear than any science, but it has served you well. Sometimes you also use it just to bang on things when you get frustrated, a function no engineer has ever officially documented, but one that is universally understood. Of course, the most famous tool of your trade is one you don't carry: the corrugates. Back at the main depots, these massive instruments lie in wait for major repairs. A 20-foot-long beam of perfectly straight wood with 4 legs, braced on each end with plumb lines for leveling. A long, shallow groove cut into its top surface serves as the ultimate arbiter. If the water you pour into it sits perfectly still and level along the groove, the surface is flat. It is the tool that allowed your predecessors to set the impossibly precise, gentle gradient of the aqueduct itself, a drop of only a foot or two for every 1,000 feet of length. It's a brilliant, if cumbersome, piece of engineering. You don't need that kind of precision for your daily walk. For you, the flow of the water itself is the only level you need. If it's moving, the gradient is doing its job. Your most important tools are not in the leather roll at all. They are the ones you were born with. Your eyes, trained to spot the unnatural green of moss where no moisture should be, or the hairline crack in a stone slab that a less experienced inspector would walk right past. Your hands, which you run along the interior walls of the channel, feeling for the gritty texture of crumbling mortar, or the slickness of a new mineral deposit. And your knowledge. You know, for example, that the concrete lining the channel, the opus sinenum, is made with crushed terracotta tiles and that special volcanic ash, pozzolana. This knowledge helps you understand not just that it is broken, but how it is breaking. You can read the story of the aqueduct in its stains and cracks, a language of decay that only you and a few others can understand. You pack your tools away, the ritual complete. You roll the leather flap back over, securing the ties. The familiar weight of the satchel settles on your shoulder. The sun has now crested the hills, and long, gentle rays of light are streaming across the landscape, illuminating your path. The world has been given its color back. Your tools are ready. You are ready. You stand up, stretch your back, and look down the long, straight line of the covered channel stretching towards the horizon. The real work of the day, the endless, meticulous inspection, is about to begin. The walking was just the prelude. Now it's time to truly see. You walk over to the edge of the stone structure. Here, the Aqua Appia runs just at ground level, a long, low tomb of stone containing a river. Its lifeblood is hidden from view by a series of massive flat capstones, each one weighing as much as a small cart. Your first task of the day is to look inside. This isn't a matter of simply lifting a manhole cover. This is a task of leverage and muscle. You retrieve a thick wooden pole from a hiding spot in a nearby thicket, left there for convenience, and wedge one end into a purpose-cut notch in the side of the slab. You plant your feet, grip the pole, and throw your entire body weight against it. For a moment, nothing happens. The stone is stubborn, settled by time and gravity. Then, with a low, grinding groan of stone against stone, the slab begins to move, scraping slowly back to reveal a dark, rectangular opening. A wave of cool, damp air, smelling of wet stone and clean water, washes over you. It's a familiar, comforting scent. You kneel down, your knees complaining on the hard ground, and peer into the darkness of the specus, the water channel itself. The morning light illuminates the interior for a few feet, revealing the scene of your daily battle. The water, about 3 feet deep, flows with a steady, unhurried gurgle. It is remarkably clear, a testament to the settling basins far upstream. The walls of the channel are coated in the smooth, reddish-brown concrete, the famous opus sinenum that keeps the water from seeping out. This is your canvas, and you are looking for imperfections in the masterpiece. Your eyes scan the surface. You look for dark lines, the telltale sign of a fissure. You look for patches of lighter color, which could indicate a recent shoddy repair. You look for any intrusion, any place where the outside world is trying to force its way in. Your gaze falls on a tiny trailing green tendril, no thicker than a piece of thread, emerging from a joint between the wall and a capstone. A root. It seems harmless, a tiny speck of life in this sterile stone corridor. But you know better. You have seen what such roots can do. Given time, they can grow with the slow, inexorable power of a hydraulic press, widening the smallest crack, pushing apart massive blocks of stone until a leak becomes a rupture. These little green threads are the aqueduct's most insidious enemy, more persistent than any army. They are, as you've often thought, more determined than a Roman tax collector. You pull the small hammer from your tool roll. Using the clawed end, you lean into the channel and scrape at the root, pulling a small clump of dirt and moss away with it. You then use your fingers to probe the crack it came from. It seems shallow. You make a mental note. This joint will need to be repacked with fresh mortar soon. You don't make a mark. Not for something this small. The chalk is for real problems. You are part of a vast maintenance network, a system first properly organized by the great Marcus Agrippa during the reign of Augustus. He created the first public familia aquaria, a crew of 240 skilled slaves dedicated to the upkeep of the aqueducts. While you are a free man, you are a spiritual successor to that system, a guardian of the flow. You continue your visual inspection. The flow of the water tells its own story. An unusual ripple might hint at an obstruction downstream. A section where the water seems to slow or pool even slightly could mean a buildup of sinter, the calcium carbonate deposits that are the aqueduct's equivalent of hardened arteries. Historians still argue whether inspectors followed a strict, predetermined route every day, or if they were given discretion to focus on known problem areas. For you, it's a bit of both. You have your designated stretch, but you know the places that always seem to cause trouble. The section that runs near that grove of fig trees is a constant battle against roots, for example. You move to the outside of the channel now, walking slowly along its edge, your eyes scanning the ground. You are looking for damp patches, for grass that is unnaturally green and lush. These are the symptoms of a leak, the water escaping its prison and bleeding into the surrounding earth. 10 paces down, you see it. A patch of dark, moist soil, no bigger than your two hands. It's a slow, seeping wound. You kneel again, pressing your fingers into the mud. It's cold. You tap the exterior wall of the aqueduct with your hammer. Thud, thud, thunk. The third tap sounds slightly different. A duller, less resonant note. You found the spot. You pull out your lump of chalk and draw a simple X on the stone. This is the signal for the repair crews. When they eventually pass this way, they'll know to investigate here. You wonder what they'll do. Perhaps they'll have to divert the water and patch it from the inside, or maybe they will use one of their clever wooden cofferdams to make a dry workspace right in the flowing channel. That isn't your concern. Your job is to find the illness, not to be the physician. With a heavy sigh, you return to the open capstone. The inspection here is done. You use your wooden lever again, straining to push the massive stone back into place. It settles with a deep, final thump, once again sealing the river in its tomb. You stand, brushing the dust and dirt from your hands and knees. You look ahead. The line of the aqueduct stretches on, disappearing into the distance. You can see the next capstone, and the one after that, and the one after that. There are hundreds to go. The sun is higher now, and the slow, painstaking work has only just begun. You continue your walk, the sun now climbing higher in the sky, chasing away the last of the morning's coolness. The rhythm of your pace is hypnotic. The crunch of your sandals on the path, the soft rustle of your tunic, the distant buzz of insects in the fields. For an hour, the inspection is uneventful. Slab after slab reveals nothing but the steady, reassuring flow of water. You find a few more tiny roots to clear, another patch of suspicious moss to scrape away, but nothing worth a chalk mark. This is the nature of the job. Long stretches of absolute, mind-numbing normalcy, punctuated by moments of minor crisis. Your mind begins to drift, lulled by the monotony. It's a subtle change in the landscape that snaps you back to the present. To your right, the dry, golden brown fields of late summer stretch towards a small farmhouse. But one particular patch, a sprawling plot of leafy vegetables, is an almost shockingly vibrant green. It's too green. It glows with a health that the surrounding terrain cannot justify. There is no stream nearby, and the farm's well is on the other side of the property. But the field sits suspiciously close to your aqueduct. You stop walking, and a familiar, weary sigh escapes your lips. You've seen this 1,000 times. It's the universal Roman farmer's belief that any public resource passing through their land is essentially a gift from the gods, intended for them personally. You veer off the main path, your sandals sinking slightly into the softer soil as you approach the base of the aqueduct. You begin a slow, deliberate patrol, your eyes scanning not the stone of the structure itself, but the ground around it. You are looking for signs of disturbance, earth that has been recently dug, stones that look out of place, an unnaturally dense patch of shrubbery. You hear it before you see it, a faint, almost musical trickle. It's a sound that doesn't belong. The water inside the aqueduct is a low, muffled gurgle. This is the high-pitched sound of a small, steady stream. You follow the sound to a thick oleander bush growing against the foundation. It's been allowed to grow wild, providing perfect cover. You pull back the tough, leafy branches. And there it is. A lead pipe, no thicker than your thumb, has been expertly drilled through the mortar of a foundation joint. A crude flange has been hammered around the opening to make a seal, and a steady stream of clear, cold water. Your water, Rome's water, is spilling out into a small, hand-dug channel. From there, it snakes its way down the gentle slope to that impossibly green field. It's a classic illegal tap, a punctus. The work is neat, professional even. The farmer is no amateur. You feel a flash of irritation, followed immediately by a sense of profound exhaustion. This problem is as old as the aqueducts themselves. The great Frontinus, when he was curator aquarum a generation ago, wrote an entire book about managing the water supply, and he spent a good portion of it complaining bitterly about these unauthorized punctures. He saw it as a constant battle against the depredations of citizens. For you, it's just another Tuesday. You follow the little channel down to the edge of the field. A man in a sweat-stained tunic is on his knees, pulling weeds from between his rows of cabbages. He looks up as your shadow falls over him. He doesn't look surprised or angry or even particularly guilty. He just looks resigned. He gives you a slow, deliberate nod. You can almost hear him thinking, well, it was good while it lasted. The dance is always the same. He will feign ignorance, you will feign stern authority, and the business will be concluded. Your crops seem to be doing well, you say, your voice flat. He straightens up, wiping his brow with the back of a dirty hand. The gods have been kind with the morning dew this season. You just stare at him for a long moment, then gesture with your head back towards the aqueduct. The dew seems to be flowing rather steadily from that pipe up there. He has the decency not to argue. He just shrugs, a gesture that encompasses a whole philosophy of rural pragmatism. Now comes the bureaucratic part. You unroll your toolkit and retrieve a small bronze caliper. It's one of your least used but most important tools. You walk back to the pipe and carefully measure its internal diameter. The size of the fine is dictated by law, calculated based on the amount of water the pipe could draw. Your report must be precise. After noting the measurement on the wax tablet you pull from your satchel, you turn back to the farmer. You explain the fine, the summons he will receive, the legal trouble he is in. Historians still argue whether the fines for water theft were a genuine deterrent or simply treated by wealthy landowners as a routine business expense. For a small farmer like this, however, the fine will be a significant hardship. He listens, his face impassive. When you're finished, he simply nods again. You take out your hammer and a small, cone-shaped wooden plug from a pouch on your belt. You place the bung into the mouth of the lead pipe and give it a few solid taps with the hammer. Thwack, thwack, thwack. The flow of water is cut off, reduced to a pathetic drip. The repair crew will come later and do a proper job, sealing the hole with fresh mortar and lead sheeting. For now, your work is done. You give the farmer one last look, then turn and walk back to the path, the sound of the illicit trickle now replaced by the silence of the fields. It has been a successful, if deeply unsatisfying, diversion. Now the walking resumes. Leaving the farmer and his now doomed cabbages behind, you press on. The sun is approaching its zenith, and the heat of the day is beginning to build. The landscape is changing again. The flat, open fields are giving way to rolling hills, forcing the aqua to abandon its simple ground-level trench. To maintain its precise, gentle gradient, it must now burrow directly through the earth. Ahead of you, the stone channel disappears into the side of a large, grassy hill. Your path doesn't go around it, it goes over it, leading to a small, stone-lined opening set flush with the ground. This is a puteous, a vertical access and ventilation shaft, and it is your door into the next section of your inspection. You pause at the shaft's edge, shrugging the tool satchel off your shoulder. The air rising from the opening is noticeably colder, carrying the scent of deep, damp earth. Before you descend, you have a crucial task. You retrieve your small clay oil lamp. You check the braided linen wick, trimming a bit of the charred end with your fingernail. You then unstopper the filling hole and hold the lamp up to the light, squinting to check the oil level. It looks to be about half full. You hesitate. It's probably enough, but probably is a dangerous word when you're a quarter of a mile inside a hill. You pull a small flask of oil from your satchel and top it up, the viscous liquid glugging slowly into the lamp's belly. A small, foolish oversight here could have very serious consequences. This is not the place to run out of light. With the lamp lit, its small, smoky flame flickering uncertainly in the daylight, you swing your legs over the edge. Your feet find the first notch in a series of crude steps carved directly into the stone lining of the shaft. You hold the lamp carefully in one hand, its metal ring hooked over your thumb, and begin your descent into the earth. The square of blue sky above you shrinks with every step. The warmth of the sun vanishes, replaced by a profound, cellar-like cold. The sounds of the outside world, the birds, the wind in the grass, fade away, replaced by a growing echo that magnifies the scrape of your sandals and the gurgle of the water below. After about 30 feet of descent, your feet touch the solid ground of a narrow stone walkway. You have arrived. You are standing inside the aqueduct. The channel of flowing water is to your right, a dark, gurgling ribbon. To your left is the rough-hewn wall of the tunnel. The ceiling is a low, oppressive arch of rock, just high enough for you to stand upright. Your small lamp pushes back a tiny, trembling circle of light, creating a bubble of visibility in an ocean of absolute black. The darkness is so complete it feels like a physical presence pressing in on you. The shadows your lamp casts dance and leap with every flicker of the flame, making the tunnel wall seem to breathe. The only other light is the distant, tiny square of the shaft you just descended, now looking like a single pale star. You begin to walk, your steps slow and deliberate. Inspection here is a different art. You rely less on your eyes and more on your other senses. You trail your left hand along the rock wall, feeling for the telltale dampness of seeping groundwater or the crumbling texture of unstable rock. Every 10 paces you stop, hold your breath, and just listen. You listen for the steady, even flow of the water. Any change in its acoustics, any new gurgle or splash could signal a partial blockage or a breach in the channel ahead. You tap the walls with your hammer, the sharp clink echoing endlessly down the tunnel. You are listening for the dull thud of compromised stone. The walls are a testament to the men who built this place. You can see the gouges from their picks, the score marks from their chisels. You wonder about them. Historians still argue whether these tunnels were dug primarily by legionary engineers with specialist skills or by condemned criminals and slaves facing brutal conditions. Whoever they were, their work was astounding. Tunnels like this were often dug from both ends at once, with vertical shafts like the one you use serving to haul out rock and check alignment. You've heard stories of the foremen using sounds, banging on the rock, and listening for the answering echo from the other crew to guide their path. A primitive method for a monumental task. A drop of cold water lands on your forehead, making you flinch. You raise the lamp. A thin, dark line of moisture is visible on the ceiling, a tiny fissure allowing groundwater to weep through. You make a mental note. It's not serious enough for a chalk mark, not yet, but it bears watching. A bat, disturbed by your light, detaches from the ceiling and flutters past your head, its leathery wings making a dry, whispering sound in the echoing silence. The job certainly isn't for everyone. You need a tolerance for the dark, for enclosed spaces, and for the constant, quiet companionship of bats. And of course, for the unnerving feeling of having 100,000 tons of earth and rock directly above your head. After what feels like an age, a new light appears ahead. It isn't the flickering, warm glow of your lamp, but a steady, pale, and blessedly natural light. It's the end of the tunnel. As you draw closer, the details of the outside world slowly resolve. The green of trees, the brilliant blue of the sky. You step out of the tunnel's mouth, blinking against the sudden, overwhelming brightness of the afternoon sun. The warmth on your skin feels like a benediction. You turn and look back at the dark opening from which you just emerged. You have passed through the hill. The inspection continues. Emerging from the tunnel, you find yourself on the edge of a new world. The rolling hills you just passed through fall away dramatically into a wide, sun-drenched valley. A small river, a silver thread in a tapestry of green and gold, meanders along the valley floor hundreds of feet below. But your aqueduct does not falter. It does not descend or deviate. To maintain its sacred, unwavering gradient, it simply leaps. Ahead of you, striding across the entire valley, is a bridge. Not a simple wooden span, but a colossal structure of stone. A series of magnificent arches marching in perfect formation from this cliff to the one 1/4 of a mile away. This is the aqueduct in its most glorious, most famous form. The engineering of necessity has become the architecture of empire. You spent your day tracing a stone serpent through its hidden subterranean world. Now you must walk upon its back as it soars through the air. You approach the start of the bridge. The low parapet wall on either side, which seemed perfectly adequate on solid ground, now looks like a laughably small barrier between you and the dizzying drop. A steady wind funnels up the valley, plucking at your tunic and making you place your feet with more care. This is certainly not a part of the job recommended for those with a fear of heights. You take a steadying breath and step out onto the first slab of the bridge. The world expands. The horizon feels impossibly distant. You can see for miles in every direction, farmhouses, patchwork fields, distant hills hazy in the afternoon light. The solid, reassuring earth is gone, replaced by an airy, exposed walkway of stone. Your footsteps, which were muffled by the dirt path, now make a distinct, hollow thump, thump, thump on the heavy capstones covering the water channel. You are a tiny figure walking on a narrow ribbon of civilization suspended between two cliffs. You begin your inspection, your eyes cast downwards. You are checking the fit of the capstones, looking for any cracks or shifts that might indicate the structure is settling in a dangerous way. You run your hand along the top of the low parapet, testing its stability. Everything seems solid, unmoving, eternal. Halfway across, you pause and dare to look over the edge. Below you, the bridge doesn't rest on solid piers, but springs from one arch into the next. You can clearly see the masterful construction. Each arch is a perfect semicircle composed of wedge-shaped stones, voussoirs, all pressing inwards on each other. At the very top of each arch is the large central keystone, the linchpin that locks the entire structure into place, turning the downward pull of gravity into a force of immense compressive strength. It is the simple, powerful secret that allows your people to span the impossible. Below, tiny figures, a shepherd and his flock, are moving towards the river. They don't even look up. To them, this monumental structure is just a part of the sky, as natural as a cloud. Your gaze drifts to the underside of the arches and you notice the birds. Dozens of pigeons and crows have made their homes in the nooks and crannies of the stonework. They burst from the structure, circling in the air currents below you before settling again. They seem like a harmless feature of the landscape, but you know they are a subtle, long-term menace. Their acidic droppings, accumulating over years, will slowly eat away at the mortar, compromising the very joints that hold these tons of stone together. The repair crews are constantly having to rappel down the sides to clear out nests and repoint the masonry, fighting a never-ending war with the local wildlife. You look at the sheer scale of the arches and wonder at the men who built them. You try to imagine the valley floor filled with a forest of timber scaffolding, a massive wooden skeleton, the centering that held the stones in place until the final keystone was set. Historians still argue whether the massive wooden scaffolding needed for these arches was prefabricated or built entirely on-site for each project. Looking at the size of it, it's hard to imagine either. It seems a feat as monumental as the stone bridge itself. Your inspection of the top is complete, but the job is only half done. You cross to the far side, back onto solid ground, and then immediately begin the long, zigzagging descent on a narrow path that winds down the steep valley wall. Once at the bottom, the perspective shifts entirely. You stand at the base of one of the colossal stone piers, craning your neck to look up. It's like standing at the foot of a cliff you have just climbed. The arches soar above you, framing perfect blue pieces of the sky. Here, your job is to check the foundations. You walk around each pier, examining where it meets the ground, looking for any sign of erosion from the river or shifting earth that could undermine the entire structure. Everything here looks good. The foundations are solid, anchored deep in the bedrock. Now comes the worst part. The long, lung-busting climb back up the other side. The path is steep, and the afternoon sun is relentless. By the time you reach the top, you are breathing heavily, sweat stinging your eyes. You allow yourself a moment to rest, turning to look back at the bridge. From this vantage point, it is breathtaking. A perfect, man-made line drawn straight across the wildness of nature. You feel a quiet surge of pride. You are not its builder, but you are its caretaker. You are the reason it still stands. The day is waning, but there are still miles to go before you can rest. The bridge is behind you, and the long, slow walk continues. The afternoon is wearing on. The shadows of the trees are long and skeletal across your path, and the golden light of the lowering sun bathes the countryside in a warm, sleepy glow. You have left the grandeur of the bridge far behind you, and the aqueduct has returned to its humble, ground-level form. Your legs ache from the long climb out of the valley, and a deep, settled weariness has taken root in your bones. But the day's work is not quite finished. You are approaching a section you know to be a perennial problem. A place where the aqueduct's own lifeblood turns against it. You don't even need to lift a capstone at first. You can hear the problem. The usual smooth, consistent gurgle of the water is replaced by a choked, sluggish sound. The flow is labored. You find an access point, and with a familiar groan of effort, slide back the heavy stone lid. The sight inside confirms your suspicions. The channel, which should be a clean, open rectangle, is constricted, its walls and floor coated in a thick, lumpy, off-white crust. Its center, the stone that grows from water. This is the eternal paradox of your work. The very water you deliver, sourced from springs that filter through the limestone hills of the Apennines, is saturated with dissolved minerals. As it travels along the channel, agitated and exposed to the air, these minerals slowly precipitate out of the solution, clinging to any surface they can find. Layer by infinitesimal layer, day after day, year after year, the aqueduct tries to choke itself to death, turning itself back into a mountain, one mineral deposit at a time. Your job is to perform the painful, tedious surgery required to keep it alive. With a heavy sigh, you set down your satchel. There is no avoiding this. You take off your dusty sandals and your cloak, laying them carefully on the grass. You then roll up your tunic, tucking it high on your thighs. From your tool roll, you select your hammer in a sturdy, wide-bladed chisel. You take a moment to look at the task ahead, then down at the cold, shallow water. This is by far the worst part of the job. You swing your legs into the channel, hissing as the cold water envelops your feet and ankles. It's a shock to your warm skin. You find your footing on the uneven, crusty bottom and crouch down, the water swirling around your knees. The position is immediately uncomfortable, a deep strain on your back and thighs. You place the edge of the chisel against a thick bulge of sinter on the wall and strike it firmly with the hammer. A loud, sharp tink echoes in the confined space, and a jarring vibration shoots up your arm. A few tiny white chips fly off, dissolving into the current. You strike again, ting, and again, tink. This is your world for the next hour. The rhythmic, monotonous sound of metal on stone. The cold water soaking into the hem of your tunic. The burning ache in your back. You work your way along a foot of the wall, chipping away at the stubborn deposit. The center is surprisingly hard with the texture of porous rock. After a dozen blows, a larger piece the size of your fist breaks free with a dull crack. You pick it up. It's heavy, its layers of accumulation clearly visible, like the rings of a tree. You toss it out of the channel onto the grassy bank and go back to work. Tink, tink, crack, another piece is gone. As you labor, you look at the large, pale chunks of mineral you've removed. It's a nuisance, a constant source of back-breaking work. And yet, you've heard a strange thing. In Rome, some of the wealthy patricians pay good money for this stuff. The repair crews, when they remove massive sheets of it from the city's settling tanks, sometimes sell it to stonecutters. They saw the layered sinter into thin slabs, polish it until it shines, and use it as a decorative veneer for the walls of their villas. One man's endless headache is another man's fashionable interior design. The irony is not lost on you. You pause, planting the chisel in the water and pressing your hands into the small of your aching back, trying to stretch out the cramp. You look at the section you have cleared, then at the endless length of choked channel stretching into the distance. Historians still argue whether the channels were cleaned on a regular, preventative schedule, or if crews only acted once the buildup became severe enough to impede the water flow. Your weary muscles and the state of this channel suggest the answer is somewhere in the middle. You fight the worst of it when you can, knowing you can never truly defeat it. You manage to clear a section about 10 feet long. It's not perfect, but you've noticeably widened the channel. The water now flows with a freer, healthier sound. It's a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. Exhausted, you haul yourself out of the channel. You are soaked from the knees down, and a deep chill has settled into your legs. You stand on the bank, dripping and shivering slightly as the evening breeze picks up. You wring out the hem of your tunic as best you can and wipe your muddy feet before putting your sandals back on. You pack away your hammer and chisel, their metallic smell clinging to your hands. The sun is now touching the horizon, and the hard labor is finally done. It is time to find shelter for the night. The sun has finally surrendered, its last embers of light fading below the horizon. A deep purple twilight bleeds across the sky, and the first stars are beginning to appear. You are soaked, chilled to the bone, and every muscle screams with a dull, throbbing ache from the labors of the day. The rhythmic walking, the strain of moving stone, the awkward, back-breaking work in the channel, it has all taken its toll. Your only thought now is of shelter, food, and sleep. Ahead you see a welcoming, flickering orange light. It's a way station, a mansio, one of the many official rest stops built by the state for travelers on government business. For you, tonight, it is paradise. You push open the heavy wooden door and are immediately enveloped by a wall of warm, thick air. The common room is hazy with smoke from the central hearth and the greasy fumes of a dozen oil lamps. It smells of roasting meat, spilled wine, damp wool, and unwashed humanity. The low-ceilinged room is filled with the dull murmur of conversations from other tired travelers, merchants, a government clerk, two off-duty soldiers hunched over a game of dice. No one pays you any mind as you drip your way to the counter. You trade a few small bronze coins for a bowl of thick lentil stew, a hunk of dark bread, and a cup of watered-down wine. You find an empty space at a long, scarred wooden table in a dim corner. The warmth of the stew in your hands is the best feeling you have had all day. You eat slowly, methodically, not because you are savoring the flavor, it's a bland, functional meal, but because you are too tired to eat quickly. The warm food and cool wine begin to chase the chill from your body, and the deep ache in your muscles softens into a more manageable weariness. For a few blissful minutes, you are just a man resting at the end of a long day. But your work, the most vital part according to your superiors, is still not done. For in the eyes of Rome, if it is not written down, it did not happen. With a sigh, you reach into your satchel and pull out your final tool. It's not made of iron or wood, but it is just as essential. It is a tabula charada, a folding wooden tablet. You open it to reveal two shallow rectangles filled with blackened beeswax, smooth to a glossy finish. Alongside it, you place your bronze stylus. This is your connection to the vast, paper-shuffling heart of the empire. Your day of sun, stone, and water must now be translated into the neat, sterile language of a formal report. You dip your bread in the last of the stew and begin. Holding the stylus like a pen, you use its sharp point to scratch white letters into the dark wax. The sound is a faint, dry whisper in the noisy room. You start with the date and your designated section of the Aqua Appia. Then you must reconstruct your day mile by painstaking mile. You have to remember the exact location of that first small leak you marked with chalk. Was it near the third or the fourth milestone past the old oak tree? You close your eyes, picturing the path, and commit to the fourth. You detail the illegal tap at the farm, carefully scratching down the farmer's name, the location of his property, and most importantly, the exact measurement of the punctus as recorded by your caliber. The fine and your own reputation for accuracy depends on this detail. You make a mistake transcribing the name, the letters clumsy from your tired hand. You pause, momentarily frustrated, then flip the stylus around. The other end is not a point, but a flat, spatula-like wedge. You press this eraser into the wax, and with a few firm strokes, you smooth the incorrect letters back into black anonymity. The surface is clean again. You carefully re-scratch the name, getting it right this time. Historians still argue whether inspectors like you were required to be fully literate, or if they dictated their findings to professional scribes at larger administrative posts. As you painstakingly form each letter, you feel the weight of your own lonely literacy. Your report will be a dry, emotionless document. It will not mention the beauty of the bridge, the claustrophobia of the tunnel, or the bone-deep weariness you feel. It will simply be a list of observations and actions taken. Section 5, minor center buildup noted. Section 6, cleared by hand. You finish by noting that your report is to be handed to the morning courier of the cursus publicus, the state postal system. You imagine this small, waxy tablet beginning its own journey along the Roman roads, pass from rider to rider until it reaches a stuffy office in the city. There, a clerk will likely copy its contents onto a papyrus scroll, which will then be filed away in a vast archive. Perhaps no one will ever read it, but the process must be followed. The system demands it. Finally, it is done. You read it over one last time, your finger tracing the lines in the wax. It is an adequate summary of your labor. You close the tablet, the two wooden leaves clicking shut, protecting the soft wax within. The day is officially over. You drain the last of your wine, push yourself up from the bench, and nod to the innkeeper who points you towards a narrow doorway. Beyond it lies a small room with a few straw pallets on the floor. It is all you need. Your report is written, and your body has nothing left to give. Sleep is the only task that remains. Sleep offers little respite. You wake on the straw pallet before the first hint of dawn, your body a map of aches and pains from yesterday's labors. Every muscle seems to have a complaint. You rise stiffly in the cold, dark room, dress in your still, damp tunic, and make your way back to the common room. There, you hand your wax tablet to the station master, who will give it to the first official courier heading towards Rome. You exchange a few coins for another piece of hard bread and cheese, which you eat as you walk out into the pre-dawn gloom. A new day, a new stretch of aqueduct, the same endless, wearying task. You begin your walk just as you did yesterday, the familiar crunch of your sandals setting the rhythm for the hours to come. The aqueduct here runs along a series of low, sturdy arches, lifting at just 10 or 15 feet above a stretch of marshy, low-lying ground. The air is thick with the smell of damp earth and the course of frogs. For the first hour, the work is routine. You walk the top of the channel, peering over the edge to inspect the arches as you pass. The rising sun cuts through the morning mist, casting long, dramatic shadows. Everything seems peaceful, stable, eternal. It's one of those long shadows that first catches your eye. There's something wrong with it. A line on the third support pillar ahead that doesn't match the clean, vertical lines of the stonework. It's a subtle distortion, a slight diagonal darkness that looks unnatural. A casual traveler would never notice it, but to you, it's a jarring note in a familiar symphony. You pick up your pace, your heart beating a little faster. You tell yourself it's probably nothing. A trick of the light, a patch of discolored moss. But your gut, honed by years of walking this line, tells you otherwise. You reach the spot on the aqueduct directly above the pillar and look down. You can't see the flaw clearly from this angle. Cursing under your breath, you swing your legs over the low parapet and carefully scramble down the steep, grassy embankment. The wet ground is slick, and you have to dig your fingers into the soil to keep your footing. You finally reach the marshy ground at the base of the series of arches and make your way towards the pillar, your sandals sinking into the soft mud. As you get closer, the knot of unease in your stomach tightens into a cold dread. It is not a trick of the light. It's a crack. But that word feels too small, too inadequate for what you are seeing. This is a wound. A deep, jagged fissure starts near the base of the massive stone pier and zigzags diagonally upward for nearly 6 feet. It is wide enough to fit your hand in. The regular, smooth blocks of the stone facing have been pushed apart, and the mortar between them is a crumbling, powdery mess. This is not a surface flaw. This is a fundamental structural failure. Your mind, trained for this, takes over. All weariness is forgotten, replaced by a surge of focused adrenaline. You drop your satchel and run your hands over the crack, feeling the displaced edges of the stone. They are sharp, fresh. This is a recent development. You pull your chisel from its roll and use the tip to probe the fissure's depth. It sinks in deeper and deeper until the entire metal shaft is swallowed by the darkness. You feel no solid resistance. The core of the pillar is rotten. The famous Roman concrete, the opus caementitium, that should be the pillar's unbreakable heart, has failed. You can see the crumbling aggregate inside, stones that are too soft mixed with sand that is full of clay. You remember the words of the architect Vitruvius, his warnings against using poor local materials. Centuries ago, a builder trying to save time or money made a fatal choice, and you are the one to witness the consequences. You step back, craning your neck to look up. This single failing pillar is supporting thousands of tons of stone, and beyond that, the immense dynamic weight of a constantly flowing river. The crack is a sign that the pillar is beginning to buckle under the load. If it gives way, the 2 arches it supports will collapse. The sudden shock could easily create a chain reaction, bringing down the entire section of the aqueduct across this marsh. The water supply to Rome on this line would be completely severed. It would be a catastrophe. A profound silence seems to settle over the marsh. The frogs have stopped croaking. It feels as if the world is holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. You look at the elegant arches, the product of incredible ingenuity and labor. Historians still argue whether Roman engineers fully understood the concepts of tensile and compressive stress, or if their monumental successes were the result of massive overbuilding and generations of trial and error. Looking at this deep structural wound, you feel you are staring at the answer. They built for eternity, but they did not build for perfection. And sometimes their errors took centuries to reveal themselves. There is no decision to be made. This is not a matter for a chalk mark and a note in your daily report. This is an emergency of the highest order. Every minute you stand here, the aqueduct is one step closer to collapse. Your slow, methodical inspection has just become a desperate race against time. You have to get word to the regional engineer, to the nearest garrison, to Rome. You have to make them understand. You turn from the dying pillar and begin to run. 2 days have passed. 2 days of urgent messages, of frantic travel to the nearest regional depot, and of convincing a skeptical engineering prefect that this was not just another minor fissure. Your frantic run has been replaced by a slow, anxious journey back, this time accompanied by the rumble of heavy wagons and the chatter of a dozen men. As you arrive back at the marshy hollow, the scene of your solitary discovery has been utterly transformed. The quiet, tense silence has been shattered, replaced by the chaotic, noisy birth of a major repair site. Two heavy wagons, their wheels thick with mud, are parked haphazardly, laden with enormous oak beams and coils of thick rope. A dozen men in rough, sweat-stained tunics are unloading tools: iron crowbars, heavy mallets, long two-man saws. The air, which had smelled of wet earth and marsh grass, now smells of sawdust and sweat. The men are shouting to one another, their voices rough and loud. This is no longer your quiet place of contemplation. It is a construction site, and it seems to be powered by noise and complaints. A thick-set man with a spade-like beard and hands like leather slabs approaches you. This is Lucius, the foreman, the magister of this repair gang. He nods curtly, his eyes already on the cracked pillar, completely ignoring you for a moment. He walks over to the fissure, runs a calloused hand over it, and grunts. He has the weary, unimpressed air of a man who has seen 1,000 disasters and finds this one to be merely adequate. "She's a bit grumpy, this one," he says, not to you but to the stone itself. He turns back to you. "The prefect said you found her. Said you were in a bit of a state. Your role has fundamentally changed. You are no longer the lone walker, the quiet observer. Here you are the representative of the cura aquarum, the eyes of the administration. You are the one who found the illness, and now you must consult with the physician. You walk him through your discovery, pointing out the depth of the crack, the way the pillar is bulging outwards, your theory about the bad concrete in the core. He listens, occasionally nodding, his expression unchanging. Your urgency seems to bounce off his professional apathy. With your assessment delivered, he turns to his men and begins to bark orders. The organized chaos begins. You are now a supervisor, a title that feels as ill-fitting as a new pair of sandals. Your job is to watch, to advise, and to make sure the foreman understands the precise nature of the threat. The first priority is not to fix the crack, but to stop the pillar from collapsing entirely. This means building a massive wooden brace, a temporary crutch to take the weight off the failing stone. The skilled carpenters, the artisans of the group, select the largest oak beams. They begin measuring and marking them with charcoal, their movements economical and precise. Soon, the grating rasp of a large saw biting into wood fills the air, a rhythmic two-man pulse of effort. Meanwhile, the laborers, the operae, are given the less glamorous work. They take up shovels and begin digging deep pits in the marshy ground, cursing the mud and the water that immediately seeps in. These will be the foundations for the wooden support structure. As you watch them, their faces grim with effort, you find yourself wondering about their lives. Historians still argue whether these skilled builders were respected artisans who traveled from job to job, or a lower class of manual laborers tied to specific government projects. Looking at the clear distinction between the focused carpenters and the grumbling diggers, you suspect it's a bit of both. Another group of men is working on a separate task. They are clearing and leveling a large, flat area a short distance from the aqueduct, pounding the earth with heavy wooden tampers until it is firm. You ask Lucius what they're doing. "Building a floor for the crane," he grunts. "Can't bring in the polyspaston until she has a solid place to stand. Thing's heavy. Needs a good foundation, just like anything else." You watch them, picturing the massive treadwheel-powered crane that will eventually be needed to lift new stone blocks, marveling at the sheer logistical complexity of this one repair. You spend the rest of the day in a state of anxious idleness. You are the expert on the problem, but a novice in its solution. You use your plumb bob again, showing Lucius how the pillar is leaning a fraction more than it was 2 days ago. You answer his questions about the upstream water flow, but mostly you stand out of the way, a silent, worried observer in a world of loud physical work. The slow, careful process feels agonizingly inadequate against the imminent threat of collapse. As dusk begins to fall, the noise subsides. A small camp is being established, with a cooking fire crackling to life. The first massive timbers of the support frame are now in place, raw wood against ancient stone. The aqueduct is still standing, but the jagged crack seems to mock their efforts in the fading light. This is not a problem of a day or two. This will take weeks, maybe months, and your long walk is over. For now, this noisy, muddy, anxious place is your home. A week passes. The marshy hollow is now unrecognizable, filled with a forest of raw timber. A massive, intricate cage of scaffolding now surrounds the failing pillar and the two arches it supports, its beams and cross beams transferring the immense weight of the aqueduct down to the solid earth. The immediate danger of a catastrophic collapse has passed, but the real work has just begun. The site remains a noisy, muddy hive of activity from dawn until dusk. You have settled into a strange routine of anxious observation, your own quiet work entirely subsumed by the loud emergency. Then one morning, the foreman Lucius approaches you, a papyrus scroll in his hand. A courier arrived from Rome overnight. The engineer wants a gradient reading, Lucius says, his voice flat. He wants to know if this whole section has settled. Needs a measurement upstream of the damage and another one downstream. Says we can't start taking the pillar apart until he knows the slope is still true. The task, a mission of utmost precision, falls to you. This is the science that underpins everything, and it is your domain. From a long, narrow wooden crate that looks more like a coffin, you and two of the strongest laborers carefully withdraw the chorobates. The tool you carry in your satchel is for rough, daily work. This is an instrument of near magical power. It is a single 20-foot beam of perfectly straight, seasoned oak, its surface polished smooth and dark with linseed oil. It has 4 squat, sturdy legs, and on each end a bronze crosspiece from which hangs a fine linen thread weighted with a teardrop of lead. Beside each thread is an ivory plaque inscribed with a single vertical black line. And running down the entire length of the top surface is a shallow, narrow groove, cut with geometric perfection. You and a laborer carry the instrument with the reverence it deserves up to the top of the aqueduct, 100 paces upstream from the noisy repairs. The laborers fall silent as you pass, watching you with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. This is your magic, not theirs. You direct your assistant to place it gently across the stone capstones. The background noise of the worksite, the hammering, the shouting, seems to fade away as your world narrows to this 20-foot length of wood. Your focus must be absolute. First, you must make it perfectly level. You lie on your stomach, your eyes level with the instrument, and study the plumb lines. A slight breeze, persistent and annoying, is causing the lead bobs to sway, making a precise reading impossible. You try for 10 minutes, your assistant tapping tiny wooden shims under the legs at your direction, but the wind is against you. You sigh, frustrated, and sit up. Then you remember the tool's other secret. Water, you say to your assistant. Bring me a bucket of clear water. He returns, and you take the bucket. Very slowly, very carefully, you begin to pour water into the shallow groove carved into the top of the beam. You fill it until the water is just below the brim. Then you once again direct your assistant with the shims. Now you are not watching the swaying threads, you are watching the surface of the water. You watch the tiny distorted reflection of the sky. After several minutes of infinitesimal adjustments, it happens. The surface becomes utterly still, a perfect, flat mirror stretching from one end of the instrument to the other. The chorobates is now more level than any plumb line could ever measure it. Now for the real magic. You are here to measure the aqueduct's gradient, its gentle but crucial downward slope. The original surveyors who built this marvel did so with a precision that borders on the divine. Your job is to see if their work has held. You take out a small, precisely milled bronze wedge from its felt pouch. Its thickness is exactly 1 digitus. You have your assistant gently lift the downstream end of the chorobates, and you slide the wedge beneath its leg. The water in the groove, once perfectly still, now begins to move, a silent miniature river flowing downhill. The slope of the water in the groove is now the exact slope of the aqueduct beneath it. You look at that impossibly gentle slope. This is the secret. A drop so slight it is invisible to the eye, yet so consistent that it coaxes a river across 60 miles of hostile terrain. The official charts for the Aqua Appia list the gradient as 1 part in 4,000. A drop of 1 foot for every 4,000 feet of travel. What you are seeing confirms it. Nothing has shifted. The foundation is true. You feel a profound sense of awe, a direct connection to the minds of the surveyors who stood on this very spot centuries ago. You wonder how they learned such skills. Historians still argue whether the complex surveying techniques used to build the aqueducts were passed down in written manuals or through secretive guild-like apprenticeships. Looking at the elegant simplicity of the chorobates, you suspect it was a skill taught by hand and eye, not just by words. You meticulously note the results on a new wax tablet. You show it to Lucius. He looks at your calculations, grunts in satisfaction, and walks away to shout at his men. To him, this was just a necessary delay. To you, it was a quiet moment of communion, a reminder of the sublime hidden genius that flows silently beneath the noise and mud of the world. The days at the repair site fall into a slow, grinding rhythm. The initial crisis has been replaced by the monotonous reality of heavy construction. Under the relentless heat of the late summer sun, the crew works, their movements dictated by the foreman's shouts and the sheer weight of the materials they are moving. They have begun the painstaking process of dismantling the outer face of the cracked pillar, preparing to excavate the rotten concrete within. Your role is one of watchful waiting, a quiet island in a sea of noise and sweat. The sky above is a vast, empty canvas of brilliant blue. But one afternoon, a change begins. The air, which has been hot and dry, grows thick, heavy, and humid. A strange stillness falls over the valley. The usual drone of insects ceases, and the birds in the nearby trees fall silent. Far to the west, over the distant hills, the edge of the sky begins to curdle, darkening from a hazy blue to a bruised, sullen purple. Lucius, the foreman, stops shouting at his men and squints at the horizon, sniffing the air like an old hound. A low, almost imperceptible rumble, a vibration you feel in your chest more than you hear with your ears, confirms his suspicions. "Get the canvases!" he bellows, his voice jolting the crew from their heat-induced lethargy. "Secure those timbers! Move, you slugs!" The worksite, which a moment ago was a scene of slow, methodical labor, erupts into frantic activity. The men rush to cover the stacks of freshly cut lumber and the piles of lime and sand with heavy oiled cloths. Tools are gathered and thrown into wooden chests. The mood has shifted from one of weary boredom to tense urgency. The approaching storm is not just an inconvenience, it is a threat to their entire operation. Historians still argue whether the Romans had any reliable system for short-term weather forecasting beyond observing the behavior of birds and cattle, or if every storm was a surprise sent by the gods. Looking at the crew's hurried but practiced response, you suspect they have learned to trust the signs nature gives them. The first gust of wind hits you like a physical blow, whipping dust and stray leaves into the air. The sky is now a churning mass of dark, angry clouds. You pull your thick woolen sagum, your cloak, tightly around your shoulders. Its dense, lanolin-rich wool is good for a shower, but you have a feeling this will be more than a shower. The first drops of rain fall, not a gentle mist, but big, heavy splatters that leave dark circles in the dust, each one the size of a coin. Then with a sudden, deafening roar, the heavens open. It is not rain, it is a deluge. A solid gray wall of water slams into the valley, instantly overwhelming the world with its sound and fury. A brilliant fork of lightning splits the sky, followed a heartbeat later by a crack of thunder so loud it feels like the hills themselves are splitting apart. Your cloak is soaked through in seconds, its vaunted water resistance a pathetic joke against this onslaught. Cold water streams down your back and legs, and you are as wet as if you had jumped into the channel. The carefully organized worksite dissolves into a primal world of mud and water. The ground turns to a slick, treacherous quagmire. The pits dug for the new foundations instantly fill with churning brown water. You watch in dismay as a neatly stacked pile of cut support beams, undermined by the sudden river of mud, slides with a groan and a splintering crash down the embankment. The men, their shouting lost in the roar of the storm, huddle under the relative shelter of the heavy wagons, their faces grim. You've always thought of your pain as a battle against the slow decay of stone, but now you see that the true enemy is often this, the raw, untamable power of the elements. Mud, you decide, is the true foreman on any outdoor project. You and Lucius stand under the partial shelter of the aqueduct itself, the rain lashing at you from the side. He is not looking at the chaos of his worksite. He is staring down into the valley, his expression tight with a new worry. The small river that meanders below the great bridge has become a raging brown torrent, its roar now audible even over the sound of the storm. "The foundations," he shouts over the din. "If that river scours the footings of the other piers, we'll have a dozen more pillars to worry about." You understand immediately. The Romans built their structures to last, with deep foundations and drainage culverts, but a storm of this magnitude can undo centuries of stability in a single afternoon. As quickly as it began, the storm's fury starts to abate. The deafening roar softens to a steady, hard rain, then to a drizzle. The thunder rumbles away to the east, complaining as it goes. A weak, watery sun breaks through a rift in the clouds, its light glinting on a world that has been washed clean and thoroughly ruined. The aftermath is a scene of quiet devastation. The worksite is a lake of mud. Everything is soaked, covered in a film of silt. Days of labor have been literally washed away. But the storm has left behind one final insidious problem. You walk to the nearest access point of the aqueduct and slide back the heavy lid. You stare down into the channel. The water is no longer clear. It is a murky brown slurry, thick with the dirt, leaves, and debris that the torrential rain has washed into the channel through the ventilation shafts miles upstream. This dirty water is now flowing all the way to Rome. It will clog the distribution tanks, foul the fountains, and sicken the people. The storm has not only wrecked your repair site, it has poisoned the very water you are here to protect. Months have passed. The memory of the frantic repair, the storm, and the endless, muddy grind has begun to fade, replaced by the familiar rhythm of your solitary walk. The great pillar was saved, its heart of rotten concrete replaced with a core of the finest new material, its stone face reassembled like a child's puzzle. The water, after running brown for a week, cleared and the flow was restored to its full, steady state. You completed the rest of your long inspection route without major incident, your days once again filled with the quiet companionship of the stone channel. And now, at long last, your journey is over. You have followed the Aqua Appia from the foothills of the Alban Hills to the very edge of Rome. Today, your final duty awaits you within the city walls. You are standing before the Castellum Aquae, the distribution terminus of the aqueduct. It is not a grand or beautiful building. There are no soaring marble columns or fine statues here. It is a workhouse for water, a squat, powerful, windowless structure of brick and stone, built for pure function. You show your official credentials to the guards at the heavy bronze door, and they let you pass into the echoing, cavernous interior. The moment the door closes behind you, the noise of the city is gone, replaced by a sound far more elemental and powerful, the ceaseless roar of water. The air inside is cool and damp, and the only light comes from high, grated openings near the ceiling, casting down long, dusty shafts of sunlight. In the center of the main chamber is a massive, deep tank into which the Aqua Appia, at the very end of its 60-mile journey, thunders in a churning white cascade. This is the culmination of everything, the precise gradient, the soaring bridges, the dark tunnels. It all leads to this magnificent, noisy waterfall, a man-made spring pouring a river into the heart of a city. You feel a strange sense of parental pride. You have escorted this water along its entire path, and now you are seeing it safely delivered. You watch as the water fills the primary tank to the brim, then spills over stone weirs into 3 smaller secondary basins. This is the Great Division, the moment of judgment for every drop of water that arrives. You know the system by heart. One basin feeds the city's hundreds of public fountains, the lacus, where the common people get their daily water. Another, much larger outlet supplies the immense public baths, the thermae, which consume a staggering amount of water for the leisure of the masses. The third basin feeds the pipes of private users, wealthy patricians, businesses, and the emperor's palace, who have been granted the ultimate luxury of a private water supply. It is this third basin that draws your professional attention. You walk over to it, your footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. A series of lead pipes, fistulae, emerge from its walls at various heights, each one fitted at its source with a precisely engineered bronze nozzle, a calyx. This is the heart of the system's bureaucracy and its greatest source of fraud. The volume of water a private user is allotted is determined by the diameter of this nozzle, and they pay a handsome fee for the privilege. A favorite trick of the wealthy is to bribe a plumber to install an illegally oversized calyx, or to widen the lead pipe just downstream from the nozzle. You pull the familiar bronze caliper from your tool roll. You select a pipe at random, one that, according to the inscription on its flange, supplies the villa of a prominent senator. You meticulously measure the internal diameter of its calyx. It is exactly the size it is supposed to be. You then run your hand along the lead pipe, feeling for any telltale bulge or unauthorized soldering. It feels smooth, uniform. You even check for the official stamp of the Cura Aquarum on the nozzle itself, a tiny seal of authenticity. This one is legal. But you know that for every legal pipe, there are others that have been tampered with. It is a constant battle between the state's regulations and the citizens' greed. Looking at the three basins, you see the politics of Rome written in water. A vast flow is diverted for the baths and entertainment, another significant portion for the luxury of a few hundred rich families. What is left over supplies the million common people who queue at the fountains. Historians still argue whether the water system truly served the general populace through its fountains, or if it was primarily a state-subsidized luxury for the rich in the massive bath complexes. From where you stand, it seems the priorities are clear. A clerk from the water office stands near the private basin, a large ledger book open in his hands, comparing its entries to the inscriptions on the pipes. He is a small part of the vast administrative machine that keeps this system running, a world of fees, grants, and fines. You have spent months in the open air, dealing with the physical realities of stone and water. Here, in this dim, damp chamber, the reality is one of numbers on a page and the subtle art of ensuring no one is stealing more than their fair share. You have done your part. You have brought the water here. How the city chooses to use or abuse, it is a matter for men like him. You turn your back on the roaring water and walk towards the door, back into the noise and the sunlight of Rome. Your duties are not yet complete. Having inspected the journey's end, you must now report to its beginning, the source of all authority for the waterworks of Rome. You have been summoned to the offices of the Cura Aquarum, a grand building near the Forum, to deliver your final report in person. You walk through the noisy, crowded streets, feeling out of place. Your tunic is clean but coarse, your face and hands are tanned and weathered by months of sun and wind. You are a man of the open country, and now you must enter the polished, silent world of power. You are shown into a waiting room, and you have never felt so small. The floor is an intricate mosaic of a sea god wrestling a serpent. The walls are covered in vibrant frescoes depicting mythological scenes related to water, nymphs, river gods, the founding of springs. Marble busts of former curators, stern-faced men of senatorial rank, stare down at you from their pedestals with blank, judging eyes. You sit on a simple wooden bench, a stark contrast to the cushioned couches meant for more important visitors. You place your worn leather satchel on the floor beside you and wait, your hands clasped nervously in your lap. The only sound is the distant, rhythmic scratching of a clerk's stylus from an adjoining room. After what feels like an eternity, a slave in a crisp, white tunic appears at a doorway and calls your name. His voice is soft, but it cuts through the silence like a knife. You stand, your joints stiff, and follow him down a wide, cool corridor. He pushes open a pair of tall, heavy doors and gestures for you to enter, then closes them behind you, leaving you alone in the presence of power. The room is vast and silent. Sunlight streams through a high, western-facing window, illuminating a fine dust of floating particles. The air smells of old papyrus, beeswax, and expensive oils. One wall's filled with a grid of wooden cubbyholes, each one stuffed with dozens of papyrus scrolls. Another is dominated by a massive bronze-inlaid map of the city of Rome, its aqueducts traced in lines of blue and red. At the center of it all, behind a desk of dark, polished citron wood so large it could serve as a dinner table for six, sits the curator aquarum. He is a senator in his late 50s, his hair graying at the temples, his face etched with the lines of command and concentration. He is dressed in a fine wool toga with the broad purple stripe of his rank. This is one of the most powerful men in Rome. He holds a position created by the divine Augustus himself, a post once held by the great Agrippa. He is responsible for the health, safety, and sanitation of 1 million people. He is, in effect, the master of Rome's river. And at this moment, his sharp, intelligent eyes are focused entirely on you. You are the inspector for the Appia, he says. It is not a question. His voice is calm, low, and carries the effortless authority of a man born to rule. Your reports have been received. The preliminary one on the structural failure in the Aretian Valley was alarming. Give me your account. From the beginning. Your throat is dry. You bow your head slightly and begin to speak. You try to keep your voice steady, formal, and concise. You describe your long walk, the routine checks, the minor repairs. You mention the illegal tap you discovered, and he gives a slight, weary nod, as if this is the most tedious and predictable news in the world. Then you come to the critical event, the discovery of the cracked pillar. As you describe its location, the curator gestures to a clerk standing silently in the corner. The clerk moves to a large stone table on which he unrolls a massive, beautifully drawn map of the aqueduct's entire course. The curator rises from his desk and walks over to the map, his eyes scanning its surface. "Show me," he commands. You approach the table, and with a slightly trembling finger, you point to the exact location of the marshy hollow, the series of low arches, the third pillar from the north end. He stares at the spot, his finger hovering over the map. "Here," he says softly, "an old fault line in the bedrock. The original surveyors noted it. He seems to be speaking to himself, not to you. He has a complete picture of the system in his mind, not just as a line on a map, but as a living geological entity." You stand there, a humble inspector, watching this master of the system absorb your field report and integrate it into a vast library of knowledge. You wonder what drives such a man. Historians still argue whether men of this rank took on such public works out of a genuine sense of civic duty, or if it was merely a prestigious and politically advantageous step in a competitive senatorial career. Looking at the intense, focused concentration on his face, you feel that, for him at least, the work itself is what matters. The system must endure. He asks you a few more questions, his inquiries sharp and to the point. He wants to know about the quality of the repair crew's work, the stability of the new foundations, the state of the water after the storm. You answer as best you can. When you are finished, he is silent for a long moment, his gaze distant. Finally, he looks directly at you. "Your vigilance prevented a major disruption to the city's supply," he says. "Your actions were timely and correct. You have served the state well. The praise, so simply and formally delivered, warms you more than any hearth fire. It is the highest accolade you could ever hope to receive." "That will be all," he says, turning his attention back to the scrolls on his desk. "You have been dismissed." You give another slight bow and back out of the room, the heavy doors closing with a soft thud behind you. You walk back down the silent corridor and out of the grand building, stepping once more into the chaotic, vibrant life of the city. The great weight of your responsibility for the Aqua Appia has been lifted, your duty formally discharged. You are, for the first time in months, simply a man in Rome with nothing to inspect and nowhere you have to be. You step out from the cold marble of the curator's office into the warm, chaotic embrace of the Roman afternoon. The meeting, so brief and yet so monumental, has left you feeling hollowed out, adrift. For months, your life has had a singular, linear purpose: to walk, to watch, to follow the water. Now that line has reached its end, and you find yourself without a path. The noise of the city, which was once a distant destination, is now an overwhelming, oppressive roar of cartwheels, merchants' calls, and the endless chatter of a million lives. You feel a deep, instinctual pull to leave it all behind. You buy a small loaf of bread, a wedge of cheese, and a handful of olives from a street vendor, the simple provisions of your journey feeling more comforting and familiar than any of the rich foods on offer. Without a conscious destination, you find yourself walking south, your feet finding the familiar rhythm of a long march. You pass through the great city wall at the Porta Capena, the starting point of the Appian Way. The road here is lined with the silent city of the dead, the grand tombs and monuments of Rome's great families, a stark and silent testament to the end of all journeys. Leaving the paved road, you climb a small, grassy hill. From here, you have a perfect vantage point. Behind you, the city of Rome sprawls across its famous hills, the smoke from thousands of cooking fires beginning to rise in the evening air. And before you, stretching out into the countryside, is the reason for it all. Not the humble, mostly subterranean Aqua Appia you know so well, but the colossal, breathtaking arches of the Aqua Claudia, running side by side with the Annio Novus. They are giants of stone, striding across the landscape in the golden light of the setting sun, the crowning achievement of Roman engineering, carrying water to the highest hills of the city. You sit down, the long grass cool against your tired legs. You slowly eat your simple meal, your eyes fixed on the view. You watch as the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery shades of orange, pink, and purple. The stone of the distant arches is silhouetted against the dying light, a stark, black line of unyielding purpose against a canvas of fleeting beauty. In this quiet moment, your long months of labor coalesce into a single, profound feeling. You think of the cold dawn when you began your walk. You remember the claustrophobic darkness of the tunnels, the dizzying height of the bridges, the back-breaking misery of chipping away sinter in the cold water. You recall the sudden, heart-stopping fear of the great crack and the organized chaos of the repair. Every step you took, every stone you examined was for this: to ensure that the promise made by the engineers centuries ago was kept. To ensure the water, gathered from a quiet spring so many miles away, could complete its journey to the thirsty city. The million souls behind you will sleep tonight without ever knowing your name, without ever understanding the fragility of the system that sustains them. They will drink and bathe and wash their streets, blissfully unaware of the constant, quiet war being waged on their behalf against gravity, decay, and the slow, relentless power of nature. Historians still argue whether Rome's greatest legacy was its laws and legions, or the silent, enduring engineering that made the city itself possible. As you look at the unmoving arches against the darkening sky, you know where you stand. The stone and the water will outlast them all. You have been a guardian of that legacy, and it is a good and noble and deeply tiring thing to be. The last sliver of sun is gone now, leaving only a soft purple glow in the west. The first stars begin to appear in the deepening indigo of the sky, and the chirping of the crickets rises from the grass around you. Your long, slow job is finally done. The reports are filed, the dangers are averted, and the water flows on, as it always does. And as the profound quiet of the Roman night settles gently over the hills and the monumental arches, your own long journey can finally come to a peaceful, well-earned end. There is nothing left to inspect, nothing left to repair, nothing left to report. There is only the stillness of the evening and the deep, heavy, and welcome feeling of sleep calling to you now across the quiet fields. The weight of your work is lifted and your mind is calm, clear, and ready for rest. And so you can let the image of the aqueduct fade away allowing the soft darkness behind your eyes to deepen. The story is over, its purpose served, and you can let go of the details, let go of the path, and feel only the gentle, rhythmic cadence of your own slow breathing. In and out. Each breath carries you further away from the waking world, further into a place of quiet comfort and profound peace. There are no more responsibilities now, no more miles to walk, only a soft and easy drift into the deep, restorative quiet of the night. Everything is calm, everything is still, and you can allow yourself to sink into a peaceful, untroubled sleep. Just rest now, rest.